Hello and welcome to another vlog with your host Damon Standing. It's a Pugley vlog, but it's a bit more general, and it's probably some good advice for anyone who's starting out drawing comics or is having a little bit of trouble. But this is basically my method for how I write and plan and research comics. Obviously, it's a Pugley vlog, so it'll be kind of heavily related to Pugley. So if you go to pugleycomics.com and get caught up, and you'll be able to kind of see how I work in general. But this also applied to Talisman Rogue, and it applies to the setting. So without further ado, let's begin. So writing a comic and researching. So I'd say it goes in this order pretty much. Or at least for me, it'll be write a synopsis. So that's basically an explanation of everything that's going to happen in the story. Then I would say, unless you're really, really green on the research side of it, do the research. So for example, for Take to the Skies, I did a lot of research on kind of hot air balloon procedures, so I could get stuff for the comic done correctly. But it wasn't so important for planning Take to the Skies, because in terms of synopsis, because it's like he goes on a hot air balloon, he goes down. But then when you get to like the actual drawing and the page by page level of writing, then that's where you kind of really need to know what you're doing if you want to make it realistic. Whereas with similarly actually with Jefferson Pugley Method, because that has elements of kind of veterinary medicine, but very basic. When it comes to the trial and sentence of Jefferson Pugley, that was a lot of research. I had a general idea of what I wanted to do the story, but I had to do the research before I made the synopsis, and I had to go back and forth. In fact, my cousin, he did law, and I talked a lot with him about how I could realistically do the story in terms of criminal charges and stuff. So that was very interesting. I'm not going to spoil that because it's a lot of detail, and I don't want to spoil. I mean, obviously, there is a trial and sentence of Jefferson Pugley. It's the name of the book, but I don't want to say what that is. But suffice to say, that took a lot of research, and research was a very, very big part of the production of that book. I think I probably spent 1 or 2 months researching, reading a lot of legal documents and stuff. It was probably about a month of reading that and a month of actual planning the books. Usually for a book, Pugley size, so that's like 40 pages, including the copyright page and stuff like that. I'll spend about a month writing it in synopsis form. So I've covered the research. Basically, you research what you need to research. If it's directly related to the plot in terms of the actual function of the plot, then you're going to have to do the research first. But you'll have a general idea of what you want to happen in the book, and you might have to change stuff in the plot of the book to make it work. And I really actually enjoyed researching for the 3 of each of these books, and there's a whole load of Pugley stories I want to tell, which are going to involve so much research before I even put pen to paper or fingers to typing for the synopsis. But I'll have a general idea where I want to go. I'll research it, and then I'll tell the story. So and in terms of Talisman Rogue and the setting didn't really require that much research because it's a lot more fantastical. But with Talisman Rogue, it was kind of a research one I needed to. It's not so heavy, but obviously if they're talking about medical training, like basic first aid and stuff, then I'll research it around the time that I'm actually kind of scripting. So that's the research part of it, and the synopsis part. The synopsis just writing the story. So then this is where I differ to quite a lot of people, because I'm the writer and the artist for my comics, so I don't need to do storyboarding, so to speak. So what I usually do is once I've got the synopsis, I will decide how many pages I want the story to be, and it's good to limit yourself, obviously within reason. And then I'll do a page by page breakdown and write a line or two of what happens on every single page of the comic. That may include some dialogue if I want some specific dialogue, but I usually try to keep it as natural as possible and do the dialogue while I'm writing. No, while I'm drawing. I'll kind of like decide on the dialogue on the day, because otherwise I feel it sounds too rehearsed, and unless there's specific lines of dialogue I want, then I'll leave them off until the day. So now we've got a page by page breakdown of the whole book, and so the setting, for instance, I've drawn 2 chapters, but I have a page by page breakdown and a full synopsis of the whole book, and it's just sitting as a file. So it could be completed by someone else, but don't, because I want to draw it. And same with Talisman Rogue. Talisman Rogue Chapter 3 has a full page by page breakdown, and that's a bloody long book because there's some extra stories in there. But I have a synopsis of it all the way to the end. And sometimes I change stuff. Sometimes I'll think, nah, that doesn't really work, or nah, the future's, because Talisman Rogue is based in the past now, but it was written to be in the future. Weird. In fact, I think I've noted the page that is drawn on the day that it's based. But some things just seem silly by modern day standards. Because they've happened, so you change them. I won't say what. No, it is like weaponry related. So now you've done your research, you've got a synopsis, you've got your page by page breakdown, and then usually there would be another stage, I guess, which is where you do the storyboarding, where you'd get the pages and you do a rough sketch out of them, but it's more of a writer's tool, I think. For someone to give to someone who's drawing, and because all of it's happening in here for me and the whole process is going through me, I don't bother doing it because it doesn't help me. It's just a time sink, and I have a very clear picture of what's going to be happening on the book based on the single lines that I write. There is one exception to that, which is the final 4 pages of Trying and Censors of Jefferson Pugley. I sketched them out because I wanted to decide exactly how I wanted that book to end, because it's just such a shock ending. I needed to make sure that I planned everything to lead me up to those final 4 pages. The other thing that I would say is if you do a lot of research for a book, especially if it's legal research, set it in stone and do not waver from what you've researched. So obviously I said with my I tend to do the dialogue on the day. And I had to write in big capital letters on my plans, no ad-libbing in terms of the events that are happening, because it would change the legalities of what happens in that book. So that was quite a challenge for me, because that's way stricter than I usually operate. But the result is, I'm so happy with the result. And that's basically how I write. It's research and synopsis kind of done together, then just a page by page breakdown of each book. And I think it's important to have a plan, and a page by page breakdown I think is definitely required. And you can edit. Don't force yourself to stick completely to the plan. But it's definitely a very helpful tool, and I would recommend it to anyone who's writing comics in particular. Is page by page breakdown. And if you want to go into frame by frame breakdown with storyboarding as well, then it's very useful if you're a writer to give to an artist. But if it's something really specific that you need, like the end of the second Pugley trilogy, it's very useful. That's my advice on that. It's a bit longer video than I thought I'd do, but I think I just need to make sure that I clearly explained my motivations and why I would recommend those things. So in summary, synopsis, because you need to know what you're doing. Research, because you need to know what you're doing and how it's done. Page by page breakdown, because you need to know what's happening, and your pacing. Pacing is very, very important, especially in something with twists and turns. And then frame by frame breakdown if you need to. That's about it. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was slightly enlightening. It's probably not for anyone who actually does comics, but for someone who's interested in how the Pugley comics work, then it might be a little bit interesting. And it's definitely good for me to kind of express it so that I can remind myself to stick to the plan. Catch you later.